James Pawson back once again with some political philosophy for you. Before I tackle the big old topic of race, which you know I've been putting off, or I did do once, but it was horrible, and I took that video down because of my mercurial nature. Nothing boils my blood quite like discussions of race, I gotta admit it. Let me set the stage by reading from my favorite passage in Romeo and Juliet, in order just to instill some sense of decorum in myself before we progress with this discussion. Benvolio, kind of the more passive, laid-back kind of guy. You get the sense that he's a pothead. Mercutio, you get the sense that he's a logger lad and he drinks. He likes to fight. And again, his name comes from the fact that his blood boils like mercury. It's his temperament. Temper has to do with heat. And anyways, just bear with me here. I pray thee, good Mercutio, let's retire. The day is hot, the Capulets abroad, and if we meet, we shall not scape a brawl. For now, these hot days is the mad blood stirring. Thou art like one of these fellows, that when he enters the confines of a tavern, clasps me his sword upon the table, and says, God send me no need of thee, and by the operation of the second cup, draws on the drawer, when indeed there is no need. Am I such a fellow? Come. Thou art as haughty a Jack in thy mood as any in Italy, and as soon moved to be moody, and as soon moody to be moved. Okay, I'm just gonna end it there. I just needed to do that. Thanks for bearing with me. Now let's get into the fucking whole race thing. Oh, it is interesting to recognize the Capulets and the Montagues. The fight, the ongoing fight, and for why? Well, for what good reason? And the lieutenants of the Montagues here in this scene, well, one of them, just letting himself get swept away. Now, let us not let ourselves get swept away in the political discourse of saying that Donald Trump is a fucking racist? Donald Trump is racist. Okay, most of my listeners are pretty right-leaning or centrist. And you have heard this over and over, and you're going to keep hearing this. Donald Trump is a racist. Donald Trump is a racist. Especially here in Canada, where there isn't a pressing... we don't feel a pressing need to be critical thinking about American politics, because we need to believe that you Americans are fucking morons. Oh, so much of Canadian this life, when it comes to Canadian identity, revolves around, oh, Americans are morons. Well, we're all kind of morons, because a lot of us, all of us, I'd say, all of us are guilty of the fallacy of equivocation when it comes to race. Please understand. Equivocation is when you treat two different words or concepts as if they're the same thing, and you use them interchangeably. That's a fucking problem. And that's a problem that can also be a strategy that I would say I do strongly believe that the left is engaged in. I feel stronger about it than that. It's a fact. Clinton, Obama, the left, going back as far as, I don't know how far, at least in my lifetime, have always used the fallacy of equivocation to trick people into thinking, follow along with me here on screen, that race is the same thing as nationality, is the same thing as religion, is the same thing as culture. Those two, last two, religion and culture, yeah, okay. Most people can kind of get it, that they're not the same fucking thing. But race and nationality. Next time you hear somebody call Donald Trump a racist, say, pardon me, racist against who? And when they say Mexicans, please remind them, Mexicans not a fucking race. Canadian is not a race. American is not a race. There's certain nationalities and countries on this planet where they are monocultural and monoracial. So yeah, you could make that argument. But here in the Americas, plural, Mexico, Canada, America, throughout South America, especially Brazil, there isn't one single skin color. Okay, now I will admit, you could say that I'm going wrong by equivocating race with skin color, but tell me that's not what fucking people do. Tell me that the majority of people, that's not exactly what they're doing. They're equivocating skin color and race. That, when you get right down to brass tacks, is the only real, quote-unquote, racial characteristic that they can use to determine who belongs to what race. Which is fucking retarded. I think it's so fucking... Okay, not to let myself become too haughty here. Let me take a swig from my ale before I get too worked up. Because I think if you know me, if you know my channel, you know that I'm a half-breed, okay? But you know that culturally, I'm kind of just another white Canadian, like these guys, my friends, when we were living in Germany. Oh boy, this is me in Iceland, and I don't know. Anyways, I'll get to Nagar Black, the racist Swedish ice cream. I'll get to that later, I hope. If there's nothing more, I think a lot of people click on my videos and they don't sit through the whole things. If there's nothing more that you take away from this video, please realize race, i.e. skin color, nationality, and religion and culture, they're not all the same fucking things. They're not all the same things. But the left loves to clump them all in together in order to create a kind of wedge. A wedge that drives us apart. Isn't that funny? They drive these concepts together in order to have a potent tool to drive us apart, and they fucking are doing it. I can't be the only one who feels like this whole thing about Black Lives Matter would have kind of been laughed at in the 80s, and even in the 90s, and even, no, okay, the 80s and 90s. But they drove the wedge back between us. They drove us. Who am I saying us? That's the other thing, this false polarized way of thinking that there's black and white. Sorry, look, where I come from, having this skin tone doesn't mean I'm black. It means I'm brown. I got news for you. There's other continents on this planet besides Africa and Europe and North America. And on one of them other continents, there are brown people. And on one of them other continents aside, there are... Okay, I think most of my listeners are smart enough to understand that thinking of the world in terms of black and white is fucking retarded. And I've made so many videos about false polarization. I don't think I've ever overtly talked about how that is also a problem with race. But anyways, here, let me get back on track here. So I feel like what the left is doing is beating a dead horse back to life. The dead horse of racism and racialism. Beating this fucking dead horse, and now we've got this zombie fucking dead horse fucking walking around, and the left rides it into power. That's why Obama is in power. And the funny thing is, he didn't just ride it into power, he kept it going. And I think a lot of people would agree with me to say that race relations in the United States are much worse now at the end of Obama's fucking 2-term reign. They're worse now, not better. They look a lot worse, certainly, because the media keeps hinging on that false equivocation between race, culture, nationality. And, well, religion now is when we move away from black and white and we start talking about Islam. Now, as a matter of fact, Islam is both a religion and a culture. But anytime you hear somebody levy a criticism against somebody who's highly skeptical or critical of Islam, as am I, though not in my videos so much, sometimes... Every time you hear somebody call people like me racist, because I'm very critical of Islam, Islam's not a fucking race. Have you heard of a country called Malaysia? Yeah, they're all, Asian, yellow, if you need to think of things in terms of fucking basic tonal colors, right? Malaysia is a majority Muslim country. There's Muslim Chinese in the Western province, the Uyghurs, they're called. God, it's just such a basic concept. And if I can't say anything else, if you don't listen to anything else I say here today, please understand, race, nationality, religion, and culture are not necessarily all the same thing. They rarely ever are. They rarely ever are, especially in the Western world. And if you assert that they are, and if you constantly talk about them like they are all the same thing, or even like one or two of them, or even like 2 or 3 of them are all the same thing, you're part of the problem, not the solution. You're ripping open the wounds of racialism. And this obviously is not just the problem on the left. Okay, obviously, in my last video, I talked about those, like, two old white ladies. My last video or second last video? Kind of talking shit to me, at me, but to each other. And, because they made the assumption that because of my skin color, I wasn't part of the same culture as them. And I think I thoroughly disproved that in my last couple of videos. And other videos of mine. I am a Northern Canadian. I'm at least a Canadian. Northern Canadian, I'm working on it. But I'm fucking Canadian. My skin color does not negate that. If it does, it's because you equivocate. And yeah, a lot of people on the right are doing that. But the people on the right doing that don't do it in public political discourse. That's the difference. Who does the equivocation in public political discourse? It's the left. It's the left, and they do it under the guise of wanting to not be racist, but it's already racist. It's already racist to equivocate between skin color and culture. Who else has been guilty of this over time? I feel like Spike Lee is pretty fucking guilty of that. I feel like he is so tied to the notion of black being culture, of a black culture. I think, with him, there's some hope. I don't know. He's a bit of a fucking wanker. Look, I wanted to tell this story about when I was riding the school bus as a kid. Before high school. Okay, same school bus, but before high school. Same school bus in grade 7 and 8 that we took to high school. But when we were young, the black guys that rode the bus with me, like black is in of African descent, okay, African Canadian, they kind of spoke more similar to me. Okay, I'm a bit of a geek, right? But they spoke fucking normal. They spoke proper English. We get to high school a couple months later. I'm on the same school bus and I'm listening to, yo, guy, what the fuck, bluck, 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 yo, fucking gangster shit, yo, fuck my bitch. And what the fuck happened? What the fuck happened? They felt that they needed to self-stereotype to belong to a certain culture. I could have fell into that with them too, but I couldn't because I'm a brown guy. And there was the self-stereotyping brown people at my high school too. Yo guy, goji doji guy. I'm not gonna get into it. I fucking hate them all. I hate them all. You know why? Because as a half-breed with a Canadian father, a white Canadian father, I felt more at home with these dudes that you see here on screen. Or even when I was traveling to Europe, with these awesome fucking Italian people that I hung out with. I felt so much more at home with them than with, yo, block guy, yo, what the fuck, yeah, get off the block guy, what the fuck. I felt so much more at home with white Europeans than I ever did with self-stereotyping, self-fucking equivocating black people and Indian people and whatever people. I always got along better with white people because I generally thought there was more critical thought there, but it's not just that. It's because of the culture that I identified with. To equivocate the color of my skin with the culture. I mean, to most of you listening to this is so... Yeah, we get it, James. Yeah. So some of you, you're fucking livid. There's probably a couple people listening like, no, fuck you, no, I have to defend my dumbed-down, lazy notion that skin color and culture are the same fucking thing. Somebody who's been highly critical of the way that black people fall into this so-called quote-unquote black culture, despite themselves, is Thomas Sowell. He's a black sociologist. I highly recommend that you pick up some of his books. You can probably get them on YouTube as spoken word. He's so fucking brilliant, and the left hates him. He's a black man, he's critical of black culture, and the left hates him. The left hates him because he's breaking apart this wedge, this whole big wedge of equivocation. He breaks it apart. And he lets you understand nationality, religion, culture, and race, they're all different fucking things. And when you fall into the mistake of thinking that some of those things are the same thing, you're quite frequently doomed. Yeah, this is why black African-American kids are doing so poorly in the education system. I'll let Thomas Sowell explain all that. I'll find a link to give you in the description below. In Canada, back in the 50s, like when Malcolm Gladwell was growing up, especially in rural places like where I live right now, there were so few colored people that there was no kind of reason to have separate cultures because of skin colors. Malcolm Gladwell, for all intents and purposes, like myself, is part of the white Canadian culture. The white Canadian culture. He doesn't make this explicit. I don't think anywhere he draws this out. Malcolm Gladwell, if you don't know, is the brilliant half Jamaican, half Canadian white brilliant sociologist. Is he a sociologist and philosopher? Author of books like Blink and The Tipping Point. If you haven't read them, please, I encourage you to do so. But for him, race doesn't come up because for him, race should be a non-issue. And doggone it, but for me, race should be a non-issue as well. It should be a non-issue. Who's making it an issue? The left, by calling Trump a racist. They're making race an issue by calling Trump a racist. He's not making race an issue. He's making nationality and borders and things like that issues. But you want to equivocate between race and nationality, then suddenly Trump becomes a racist. And if you're the sort of person that does that, I got news for you. You're the fucking racist. Okay? When I was working security in Toronto, I remember this tall fucking Aryan, blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy. Aryan, quote-unquote, because that's a fucking false label anyways, but whatever. German or Scandinavian-looking guy. I start talking to him. You know, he lived in the building. And I'm talking to him, and he's got this, like, hardcore, you know, Spanish accent, Mexican accent. And I find out I think the term he used was Mexicana, and I think Louis C.K. is part of this too. Louis C.K. is actually from Mexico, yeah. There's a lot of Aryan, quote-unquote, looking people, blonde hair, blue eyes, red hair, green eyes, whatever, from Mexico. So Mexico is not monoracial. All Mexico is a country. So the next time somebody tries to tell you that Mexican is a race and Donald Trump is racist against Mexicans, you fucking go ahead and tell them Mexico is not monoracial and Mexican is not a fucking race. So shove it with this fucking Trump is racist. If you have a clear and distinct and obvious and overt and explicit example of Donald Trump being racist, you let me know, because I've watched a lot of his speeches. A lot. And in his interviews. He's not fucking racist. I'm getting worked up again. I don't want to get too worked up again. Isn't that funny, too? This was in Verona. This picture was taken in Verona. Fucking love it. Love it. Even though, you know, Romeo and Juliet is a, you know, fiction or whatever. It's just, there's something about, you know, today is hot. I don't know if I told you already, but it's like 30 degrees in my apartment here in Northern Ontario. And it's maybe the wrong time for me to choose to make this video, but geez. We shall not escape a brawl. We shall not escape a brawl. The day is long. The day